Hi, I'm Tim, and welcome to Watch You Want. Thanks for logging on. Well, it's trade show season again. Salon International in Geneva's in our rearview mirror, and Basel's going to be coming up in the next week or so. Already I've seen so many post-Salon and pre-Basel releases that I've forgotten half of them. In the luxury watch industry, a lot of models and variations on models come and go. You see them show up on used exchanges years later, pre-owned watches, and you think, wow, where did that come from? I don't remember that watch. There are so many watches that just don't move the needle, that don't etch their places in the history books. And then there are watches like the Lange Sohne Datograph that scorch their image into your retina and your mind. Watches that change the industry and define their manufacturers. Watches that will always be remembered. That's exactly what the Datograph is. Since it debuted in 1999, it's arguably surpassed the famed Lange 1 as the icon of its manufacturer, the defining image of an Lange Sohne watch. It's the watch that made Patek, Philippe, and Vacheron Constantin rethink their levels of finish, their elegance, their design overall. And it's the watch that arguably brought Lange into the modern age, the big time. Took it shoulder to shoulder with the Swiss holy trinity of Audemars Piguet, Vacheron Constantin, and Patek Philippe. Why? Well, if it isn't self-evident just by looking at this thing, it's a beast. We'll break down the technology, the art, and the craft that Lange puts into this datograph, why it was such a breakthrough product in 1999, but first and foremost, let's put it on the wrist and talk a little bit about how it feels. Now, even the greatest watch simply won't do if it doesn't fit, and the good news is that at 39 millimeters, this watch has perfect proportions. Double polished case, you can see how it has a polished base, polished lug shoulders. It has a polished bezel, but it has a straight-grained side. The flanks are polished, the lugs are soldered on. So after the polishing, the lugs are soldered on and then excruciatingly tailored and detailed to remove any remnants of solder. This is a finely finished case that feels the business and looks it too. Everything about this watch is discreet. In platinum at 39 millimeters, it has wonderful weight to it. And not just a weight, but a balance. It doesn't want to topple my wrist over. It doesn't want to topple off my wrist. The way the lugs hug my wrist, which is 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters, for those of you in Saxony on the metric system, Guten Tag, the bottom line is that this premier example of German high horology looks as good as it feels, and it feels as good as it looks. Everything about this watch is iconic. Let's start with that combination of the platinum case and the black dial. This was the calling card for almost the entire 1999 to 2012 run of the original Datograph. This sort of tuxedo or panda look was the calling card of Lange's biggest, best chronograph. Now, I say biggest and best, I'm almost reduced to childlike language here, because that's the kind of emotion that this watch inspires. The contrasts are like lightning. They're so strong, they're so striking. Everything about this watch is like a raw nerve when you're looking at it. It's that scintillating. You take a look at the watch in the hand, it looks better on the wrist, but it's a little easier to break down the features of the dial. Now, it does have some layering to it. There is the grand date at 12 o'clock, the icon of Lange Sohne, and an icon of German watchmaking in the modern era. There are the two dials below the cannon pinion at center, and their contrasts are not quite the same contrast as the white printed tachometer scale or the white gold of these applied numerals and hands. These are actually a slight bronze, almost a slight bronze gold, as if echoing the German silver movement on the case back, with its golden honey tones, that slight hint of copper that gives it coloration and character that ages over time. In fact, they are the same material, and so they only grow more intense with time. But just an example of the parallelism, the holistic design of this fully realized effort, and how consonant each element is with the other. Now, contrast is a strong suit here. We go from black alligator to a white metal to a black dial with highlights. And on the contrary to many dress watches, this does feature lume. Both of these alpha hands are cleverly impregnated with just enough luminova to keep the watch usable and visible at night. Now, it should be mentioned, although it's written on the dial right there, that this watch is a flyback. So you can reset the movement like so without any hazard to it. And that's worth noting, because using the pushers on a datograph is an experience in and of itself. They are so smooth. With the traditional column wheel of the clockwork on the case back, they almost seem to suck themselves in. Like butter, they are smooth. Your finger feels like a hot knife passing through butter when you're pushing down on these. There are column wheel chronographs that, in the strictest sense, can call themselves column wheels without boasting the premium feel, the tactile excellence that the best column wheels boast, and that's where you really can't reduce a watch to an assemblage of terminology and specifications. The experience, just like wearing this watch on the wrist, just like seeing it in person, the experience of actuating these pushers is worth the price of admission, and believe me, it's night and day compared to almost anything else in the sector. Now on the case back, again, let's talk about that German silver movement. This is a rare departure from the Lange 3/4 plate. A lot of Lange watches, since the company's 1994 debut, featured what's known as a 3/4 plate, so a large expanse of nickel copper. That's what German silver is. That's what gives it that golden tone, covering multiple mainspring barrels and the drivetrain. And while that's a wonderful tribute to the pre-war, pre-communist German watchmaking pocket watches, the bottom line is it doesn't give you much to see. The bridges are all beautifully finished, but they're not so intricate. You don't get the sense that you're staring into the soul of the watch so much as, you know, the exterior of the watch. You're kind of wondering what lies within. And this chronograph leaves nothing to the imagination, except perhaps how a person can work something so exquisite. You see the fully hand-engraved balance cock. You see the black-polished swan's neck regulator atop it. All of these heat-blued cobalt screws and the violet of the jewels set in screwed-in golden chaton. That is old-school watchmaking. Not just hard to do, but hardly ever seen anymore. You see, on different parts of the watch, including the top of the column wheel columns, many of the screws you see on the swan's neck itself, and on this cover for the escapement cock, there's actually black polish, so finely polished, this is metal so finely polished that it reflects light only in one direction. I'm going to try to show you that as I move it, but it actually looks black unless you hold it at the exact angle at which it reflects light. Hence the name black polish. Now in the Francophone watchmaking communities this would be known as Poli Noir, but we are in Germany now, this being a Saxon watch, so I guess it's Schwarz polish. But the bottom line is, in any language, this is beautiful. This is a rare effort, and just consider how long it took Lange to produce this. This was one of the first new chronographs produced in the last quarter of the 20th century. Every Lange caliber features an alphanumeric designation starting with L, and then the next two numbers represent the year they started work on the movement. Released in 1995, this is the L9, or 1999 I should say, this is the L951. So released in 99, started in 95, a 4-year effort to get this thing to market. And then, of course, that says nothing of the time required to actually build and finish the components in each one. This is a treat for the eyes, and as stated, in the hand, operating the datograph is an absolute treat for the senses. This watch fires on all cylinders. There's nothing I don't like about it. There's nothing wrong with this watch. There's almost no way to improve it. In fact, this model, discontinued since 2012, is the preferred model of Lange aficionados. Now, the 2012 to present Lange Datograph up-down with its power reserve indicator at 6 o'clock and its larger 41mm case is a beautiful watch. It's a wonderful model. Some with exceptionally huge wrists, maybe it's a better option, but among the cognoscenti, there is no question. The original datograph, the original Lange Datograph 403.035, the reference you see here, 39mm platinum. This is the one to have. This is the classic. This is the icon. This is the future auction star. But forget about value in the monetary sense. The value of this is the emotion that went into its creation and the emotion it elicits when you wear it on your wrist. See it at our website, Watch You Want.